All right, we're back. Hopping back into Carlos's mock draft. So Jace LaViolette is a name I want to get to, and let's do it right now. What can you tell us? And where could you see him potentially falling in the draft if things go well for him over the next few months?
If things go well for him over the next few months, I think he still has a chance to wind up a little bit higher in the draft than where we had him mocked this time, which was 11. And it pained me to keep making picks and seeing him not coming off the board. I was tempted to just not pick Jace at all and see how long it would take for our scout picker to take him off the board. I wound up taking him at 11 because it just felt like his tool set was too good at that range to keep him off the board. I followed up with our scout after I took him, and I was like, "Hey, if I just hadn't taken Jace, at what range would you have taken him in?" And he was like, "I would have him in a similar range, in the sort of 8 to 12 range." Ethan Conrad at Wake Forest went off the board in front of him, which I think was a little bit surprising to me at first because in my mind, Jace has been ahead of him in that college outfield demographic for a long time. But he cited specifically the contact frequency just separated him from a guy like Jace. The big question with Jace entering this spring was how much is he going to hit? How much is he going to make contact? He had a ton of power. He walks a lot. He runs. He has all the tools in the world. But early so far this spring, he hasn't made a ton more contact than he previously does. We've also got questions from scouts kind of wondering if the athleticism and the body has backed up a little bit. He's not posting the best run times in the world anymore. And if you start to wonder about Jace maybe profiling more as a corner, and he still has those contact questions, and I think the profile just doesn't look quite as appealing as it maybe did preseason. And the way I've been saying it is I think with Jace, there are a little bit more than answers. And that's obviously not the direction you want to go if you're trying to establish a lock on 1-1.
So let's kind of go into that a little bit more, Carlos. How much, again, everyone is aiming for July, right? On the team side. They don't have to make decisions right now. But at the same time, we are now far enough into the season. This is not something where it's like, oh, he had a bad first week, so we're moving him down. That's the feedback you're getting, is that there are concerns, that there are thoughts that maybe he fits kind of more to the back of that first tier than at the top. How obviously he can still kind of turn that around if he has a great SEC, conference slate. None of this that we're talking about right now will matter. But when you're how do you kind of balance that? Like, I do feel like that we're always trying to not overreact, but react. It seems like we're getting pretty consistent feedback this way, though, now. Like, that this is kind of where this kind of sits right now as we are here getting ready to go into conference play for those college teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the scout feedback that we are getting drives the rankings more than any sort of just looking at the stat line and the performance. But for college hitters, especially, the performance is super important. If you're going at the top of the draft as a hitter, you have to go out and hit, especially in a year where there's not a ton of separation between you and the next guy up. And guys like Dean Curley and Merrick Houston and Ivar Arquette are all mashing and profile at as good or better defensive positions. And so the performance is certainly a factor, but I think definitely when you start hearing from most of the scouts that you're reaching out to and they're saying, hey, we have some real concerns, we think he's sliding down the board, that is a lot more meaningful. And I think from a process standpoint with Jace, the swing just hasn't kind of looked peak Jace LaViolette. Like I'd mentioned earlier, the fact that the run tool maybe has backed up a little bit is concerning. The good news for Jace is that SEC play has not started yet. That starts this weekend. If he goes off and he looks like his typical self and he's making more contact against better competition, I think he's got a chance to climb right back up boards, because a slower 3 or 4 week start compared to just going off for SEC play, the SEC play is going to be a lot more important in terms of how you weight his production and his performance. But it certainly has not been the start that he's wanted right now. And I think it's sliding a little bit more into kind of the middle of the first round range, which maybe seems surprising when you think about just the raw tool set and pure upside that he has.
The other thing that does stand out from this mock, and check out the whole thing at baseballamerica.com, but you mentioned it. There actually are, you have a pitcher heavy top of this mock, but there are a lot of up the middle, college middle infielders, college shortstops in the top 10 here, which is kind of a demographic that teams always kind of end up migrating to at the end of the day. And when you're comparing Jace to some of those guys, if they're performing, there's generally going to be a little bit of an edge for the guys who are playing in the dirt, isn't there?
Yeah, I would say so, especially if you have as much or more confidence in their pure hit tools. Like at the very top, if you're a hitter, you want to draft the guys that you have a lot of confidence in the offense. So I would say so. Two other players I would just mention quickly who are in this mock, but I could see them easily moving up further on our next one is Liam Doyle. At Tennessee, he's been the most dominant pitcher in the country at this stage. He's kind of an unusual profile, really reliant on one pitch, but that pitch is an exceptional fastball that is missing an absurd amount of bats. Going back to the shortstop demographic, Steele Hall on the high school side was a reclassification from the 2026 class. So he's young, he's hyper athletic, he's fast, he's turning in 80 grade run times, and he's added a lot of strength and power. So those are two names to keep in mind further down the board. But there's a lot of good commentary on all these players for our top 40 picks throughout this mock draft. It was a lot of fun to do.
I'll just add in that the 40 picks are because we wanted to make sure that every team got a pick, because you have to go to 40 to get all 30 teams to get their first pick.
Okay, that's actually important. That's helpful, and that's nice of you. 'Cause obviously, some fans don't get blessed with higher picks. Although I would say they're probably pretty fortunate, because often that means your team is pretty damn good. And you're picking in the back of draft, or maybe you had to give up a pick for, a qualifying offer, stuff like that. So anyway, Carlos, how many more in your estimation? How many more mocks will you do between now and the draft ish?
If JJ has his way, probably like 15. More realistically, I would say 6 more are probably on the way. We like to do them pretty regularly and then amp up as we get closer. But
just want to make sure, did he say 15 or did he say 5? Because
50 mocks. Carlos, thank you. Great to see you. We'll talk to you hopefully before the next mock, but soon. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.